we expect that under the SMMR programme, a lot of data that exists already can be utilised to help promote the objectives of the programme and to put together groups and projects that will maximise the resources that we already have. That isn't to say that new data can't be collected, and where new data is collected, we would expect it to end up in a suitable repository, and MEDIN may be one of those. So I'm very happy to welcome Clare Postlethwaite to speak today. She's the coordinator of the Marine Environment Data and Innovation Network, which is known as MEDIN. I have a personal interest in that because we've used MEDIN to lodge a lot of our own data, and it's an extremely useful platform. But what it is for us at the moment is a resource which will help drive, we hope, forward the SMMR programme. And we're aware that that programme has to be interdisciplinary. It has to be impact driven. And we're hoping that new collaborations that are able to solve problems in new ways are formed. And some of these groupings might be new groupings, and some of them might be from people who haven't worked much with marine data before, but have skills in other areas, in terrestrial systems, that are translatable to the problems of managing marine systems and their resources. So this seminar is very much in the hope of communicating what data is available to the widest possible group, and to allow them to think about that data in beginning to bring teams together to answer some of the aims of the SMMR programme. And those are available on the SMMR website, and you can also find them on NERC websites as well. So without any further ado, I'll thank Clare for taking part in this seminar. She took up her present position about 2014, but did an undergraduate degree at Bristol University in maths, then moved on to a PhD at Southampton, and now she's part of NOC in sunny Liverpool. So thank you very much, Clare.
Thank you very much. Right, let me share my slides.
Okay, Claire, you're good to go.
Thank you. Right, so I'm Clare Postlethwaite. I'm the coordinator of MEDIN, the Marine Environmental Data and Information Network. And as David was explaining, that in discussions with the SMMR champions, we realised it would be a really good opportunity to share some guidance with you about what resources are available for social scientists to find marine environmental data. They might be resources that you're not familiar with. Whenever I give a MEDIN presentation, I always include the MEDIN strapline, measure once, use many times. And this is a strapline that's been taken on by many different data initiatives, both in the UK and elsewhere. And it really captures MEDIN's ethos. We want to get as much of value, that's scientific value, policy value, conservation value, out of the data that we collect around the UK's coasts. Here's a brief agenda of this presentation. I'm going to talk you through an introduction to what MEDIN is. I'll talk briefly about the MEDIN data centres and the MEDIN data portal. So these are resources that you can use to find UK marine data. Then I'll give you a practical demonstration on using the MEDIN portal to find different types of marine data. And we'll also touch on finding marine information. So to help understand the difference that I mean between data and information, I've put up the data, information, knowledge and wisdom pyramid, which highlights that underpinning any decision making, that's the pinnacle, the wisdom, at the bottom of that pyramid is data. We need the data available to have evidence-based decision making. So data are the discrete measurements, might have had some processing done to make them usable, but they're the discrete measurements. When you start processing that data, maybe collating it or creating a map from it, or a forecast or a computer model, that then becomes information. So information is some sort of data product, if you like, where you've added value. And I interpret some aspects of the SMMR programme as a way to translate or to climb this pyramid, going from data to wisdom, the decision making, as efficiently as possible. So, right, what is MEDIN, the Marine Environmental Data and Information Network? It's a long-term partnership of UK organisations. It's an open partnership, so any organisation with an interest in marine data can be a MEDIN partner. We're funded by 16 sponsors. These are predominantly public sector organisations, government departments and the devolved administrations, government agencies and similar, but we also have private sector sponsors as well. And this is recognising the fact that making marine data more widely available has benefits across the marine community. MEDIN has a small secretariat, which is hosted at the National Oceanography Centre, both in Liverpool and in Southampton. So the N of MEDIN is network, and that does encompass the network, the partnerships, the organisations that are involved in delivering MEDIN's aims, but it also refers to the network of technical infrastructure that are required to make data sharing occur, make it happen. So MEDIN's aim is to improve access to and management of marine data and information, and those two things, the access and the management, they go hand in hand. You can't improve the access to something that isn't well managed. So MEDIN attacks this problem, if you will, from both sides. The way that MEDIN delivers on its aim is by creating a national framework for marine data, and I'll explain what that means now. There are 3 prongs to this national framework. The first is a coordinated network of specialist data centres, and I'll tell you what they are in a moment. Second prong is a data portal. That's a single place to search for any UK marine environmental data. And the third prong is a suite of data and metadata standards. I'm not going to talk about that in any detail today, but it's just to reflect that in order to have a single place to find marine data, you need consistency across the organisations that are contributing. So that's where the standards come in. And MEDIN is marine specific. There are lots of aspects about marine environmental data that don't apply to other sectors of data collection. So firstly, the first aspect of our national framework are the data archive centres. So these are specialist organisations that provide long-term stewardship of a broad range of marine data. I keep saying marine data, and I'll give you a little bit more of an input into what I'm actually talking about shortly. These data centres, like I said, they're stewards or custodians of data. They're custodians of data collected by other organisations. And these icons going around the screen now, they indicate some of the roles that the data centres play. So first and foremost, they provide expert advice about the types of data that they manage. And I'm going around the screen clockwise now. They are able to manage who can have access to different types of data, so they can control who has access to different data types. They make sure that the data that they hold is future-proof, so that the formats that they're using don't become obsolete. They can quality control the data, the version control the data. They provide documentation to make sure that the data is understandable in the future. They make sure that the data is secure. Some of the data centres create value-added products, such as maps. And all of the data centres are able to mint digital object identifiers, so these are DOIs, and they're so that data sets can be referenced in papers and other publications. So that's all very well for managing data, but what does that mean for this talk today about finding data? Well, the role that we're interested in here is that data centres are all making their data available for reuse. So they're an excellent source of data for your studies. So this lollipop diagram summarizes the types of marine data that are covered by MEDIN. If I just go around the lollipops, we've got oceanography, so that's the physical and biological and biogeochemical properties of the water column. Fisheries, so the distribution and abundance of different fish species. Bathymetry, that's the depth and shape of the seafloor. Species and habitats, the flora and fauna of our seas and coasts. The geology and geophysics, so the composition of our seabed and subseabed. Metocean, the meteorological and surface water properties of the ocean. And historic environment, so that's archaeology and submerged landscapes. So each of those themes, those marine environmental data themes, have different organisations that are providing the role of data centre. And the organisations involved are shown on the screen. So these are all organisations operating in their own right to provide long-term management of specific types of marine environmental data. Their role with MEDIN is that they have been accredited by MEDIN, and they are working, MEDIN provides a coordination between them so that they are operating in a coordinated manner. The next area I wanted to focus on is the MEDIN portal. So this is a single place to search the marine data collected or managed by over 600 different UK organisations. I think that's phenomenal that we've got so many different organisations collecting or managing marine data in the UK. So this is how this slide is going to summarise how the MEDIN portal works. I've already mentioned the different MEDIN data archive centres. They operate under these 7 different themes that we saw in the lollipop diagram. So if you was looking for marine data, you could go to one of those data centres directly and search their own portals. However, all of the data centres send information, the descriptions of their data, to the MEDIN portal. So we now have a single place to search the data held by all those different data centres. Moreover, there are a suite of local data holders, I'll call them, that have chosen to manage their own data. They don't want to send their data to data centres. They have various business reasons why they want to manage them themselves. And as an example here, I'll include Natural Resources Wales and the Crown Estate, but there's many others as well. And although they're managing their own data and publishing their own data on their own websites, they also choose to send the information, the descriptions of their data, to the MEDIN portal. So this means we have a single search interface where you can look for, at the moment, there's over 15,000 data sets described in the MEDIN portal. And as I said, originating from over 600 different organisations. So I'm going to provide a practical demonstration now of how to find marine data on the MEDIN portal. The first example I'm going to look at is temperature data. And the reason I've chosen that is temperature is a very commonly measured parameter in the seas around the UK. When I say common, that's a relative term, as all marine data are relatively scarce because of the cost and complexity of collecting that data. But temperature is one of the parameters that we know more about than others. So the MEDIN portal, as I mentioned, is a web interface, a web search a web portal where you have a graphical representation. So we have a map, and you also have the variety of ways of searching through the catalogue that's behind the interface. So in this instance, I'm going to search for temperature. I'm going to use the draw a box icon, and I'm going to highlight the region that I'm interested in. This is a portion of the Irish Sea, just off of Liverpool, where I'm based. And I'm now going to show you a series of screenshots, so be patient with me, but I'll try and talk you through them so that they don't get too onerous. So when you click search, you get a summary map showing data sets that satisfy your search criteria. And you also get a list of a brief description of those data sets. So for the search that I carried out, the MEDIN portal has found that there's 99 data sets that satisfy that criteria, that region of the Irish Sea and looking for temperature. I could now filter my search further. There's a range, just as if you're online shopping, there's a range of different means to filter your search. And if I look down the right-hand side of the screen, I see there's lots of green dots. So those green dots mean that the data described in this catalogue are available online. If it was a red dot, that would indicate the data isn't available online, but that doesn't mean you can't get it. There would always be a contact email provided, which means you can request that data manually. At the top of the screen, there's also an icon, a CSV icon, which allows you to download the list of data sets that you've identified in your search. So I've just clicked on the title of the first data set that was displayed in this list, and it's bringing up more information about that data set. So this one's an oceanographic data set, as we would expect. Temperature is an oceanographic parameter. And the title tells us that it was collected during a research cruise on board the research vessel Prince Madoc. So the rest of the information that's provided, we have a brief abstract. It tells us that the data holder is the British Oceanographic Data Centre, and that's one of the MEDIN data archive centres. So I know that this is a data set that has been archived with one of the accredited MEDIN data centres. There's also a section on the summary page that describes the use constraints. So this one says data are freely available to all following agreement, and there's a brief description and a link to the license that's required to use that data. But the freely available to all means that in general you're going to be able to use that data without any restrictions, apart from acknowledging its source. When I click on the green dot on this summary page, the online resource, that's the data. When I click on that link, I get taken away from the MEDIN portal and to the data centre, to the British Oceanographic Data Centre site, specifically for the data set I'm interested in. So you can now see that the pink crosses on the screen show much more detail of where this data set was collected in the Irish Sea. And as I scroll down the same screen, I'm able to select which points I'm interested in by clicking on the tick box and then add it to my basket. It's just like online shopping, and download the data. So that was my example, which encompassed a very reasonably common parameter and took me to one of the MEDIN data centres in order to download data. I want to give you a second example with a search that's much more specific and takes us to data that's not in a MEDIN data centre, or the link doesn't take you there. So the search that I chose to do for this demonstration was around seabirds and oil spill. So I'm looking to see whether there's any data sets that combine information about seabirds and oil spill. And the region I'm interested in is up in Shetland. So I've drawn the bounding box around the region of interest. And this time, again, I get the map display of where the data sets that match that criteria can be found, and I get the list of the data sets that are relevant. This time it only found 3 data sets, and I can see them all on the screen now, and I can see that they're all very relevant to my search criteria. The top one is Reading Coastal Seabirds for Oil Spill Contingency Plans, and that's hosted at the Marine Scotland, which is another one of the MEDIN data centres. So for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to look at the next one on the list, 2016 Shetland Oil Spill Sensitivity Maps for Black Guillemots. So if I click on that title, I can see straight from the green dot that that data is going to be available to download. I click on the title and I move on to the more detailed description of the data set. I see the abstract, a brief summary of what's in that data. I see again that the data is available online. And I look at the use constraints to see whether I'm going to be allowed to use it. And it says there are terms and conditions that must be agreed and signed by the data user. So it rings a bell that I need to just check who's allowed to use that data. When I click on the link to the data, that green dot, then I get taken again outside of MEDIN's website. I get taken to the SOTIAG website, the Shetland Oil Terminal Environmental Advisory Group. And by exploring the various tabs, I open up the oil spill sensitivity maps, which takes me to a download page. And this download page includes the link to the licenses I mentioned, and then also the mechanism to download the data. So there are two very different examples of how to access data using the MEDIN portal. And it might look convoluted that you're searching on one site but then getting taken to another. But the links that are built within the MEDIN website are taking you as close to the data as we can to make it as easy to access that data as we can. So I said that I would briefly mention marine information. So just as a reminder, we've got data, the discrete measurements, and that's what MEDIN is really focused on. We want to make sure that those underpinning data are available to satisfy all requirements of this data pyramid. But from time to time, you may have requirements to use data information, so products, data products, maps, charts, and so on. The MEDIN portal and the MEDIN data centres are predominantly associated with this raw data at the bottom of the pyramid. But there are some of the data centres that do create apps and charts and so on. So, for example, the British Geological Survey creates maps of the geological composition around the UK. Excuse me. And similarly, the UK Hydrographic Office and the Met Office, of course, have any predictions, forecasts, and so on for the public to use. On the MEDIN website, we have a link or an area specifically dedicated to marine information. And there are many resources that you can access from that page. So I would urge you to have a look there if you're looking for anything in the information side of things. I'll pick out a few just to highlight now. So the first is ICES, the International Council for the Exploration of the Seas. So this is an intergovernmental organisation. It's an international data centre. It's primarily focused on the North Atlantic, but it also, with its various partnerships, works in the Arctic, the North Pacific, and the Mediterranean. So again, that's primarily data in a similar way to MEDIN. EMODNet is a European initiative, the European Marine Observation and Data Network. And although it has some raw data aspects, it's mostly associated with collations of data from lots of different sources. So this is very much in the information side of things. And again, EMODNet covers a similar variety of marine data themes as MEDIN does. And the third one I wanted to highlight now is the Copernicus Marine Service. Again, it's a European initiative, and this is something that's much more focused on information side. So there's a lot of global models, the outputs from global models, which incorporate a variety of different data, satellite, in situ, buoy, ship data. So that's a resource to go to if you're interested in the output from global modelling. So just to summarise, we're nearly there. MEDIN is the hub for UK marine environmental data. It's the place to go to if you're starting out, if you don't know what you're after for environmental data, and it's also the place to go if you're starting a new project. You might be familiar with accessing data from a particular location, but you might be interested to know what else is out there. I've talked briefly about how to find marine data from the MEDIN data centres and using the MEDIN portal. And I briefly touched on a few resources for finding marine information. MEDIN's vision is for all UK marine data to be fair. So that's findable, accessible, interoperable and reusable. So that's the guiding principle for scientific data management. So that's everything I wanted to cover today. I've put a couple of contact details there, the MEDIN website, our inquiries email and the MEDIN Twitter feed. And I'd just like to finish off with a little plug for a survey that's out at the moment. MEDIN is currently partnering with OECD, the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, and GOOSE, the Global Ocean Observing System, to improve understanding of the users and uses of publicly available marine data, to have a better understanding of the marine data value chain. So if you are a user of marine data, can I urge you to complete that survey? It would be really useful to us. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Claire, for a really great talk. Good examples as well. We have a question already submitted, so for all our attendees who have joined in on the session, if you have a question that you would like to ask Claire about anything about this talk, please submit it in the Q&A box that is that you can find underneath your screen, just where Claire's presentation is. So without further ado, should we jump into the first question, Claire? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
Okay, the first question came from Andy, which regards the examples that you showed. He asks, is it possible to kind of show, I guess discuss, might be better, how the data appears when it's actually downloaded, maybe regarding the kind of data that you were talking about in your examples. What kind of formats can people expect for the variety of data that is stored in MEDIN?
Yeah, that's a very broad answer, but for the two examples that I discussed, so the temperature data from the British Oceanographic Data Centre, that has a range of formats that you can download, includes ASCII, NetCDF, and I think there's a couple of other formats as well. So there are a few options, so that's going to be a typical numeric file that you might look at. The example with the seabirds data from the SOTIAG website, I think that had some PDF files and that had some GIS, so some Geographic Information System files for download. So again, it's a couple of varieties, and that really it demonstrates what a broad specialisms and broad data types and broad data formats are required for different types of marine environmental data. Yes, I appreciate that's probably not the answer that you wanted, but yeah, there's a range.
I'm sure there's support online for how to help with some of the data that can be downloaded as well.
Absolutely, and all the data centres have experts on hand to support anybody wanting to use their data.
Great. Our next question says, well, goes into how well can MEDIN, or does MEDIN, cope with social science data, which are often more qualitative in nature and may take a broad range of forms, such as maps, photographs, potentially art, interviews and transcripts. So I'm not sure already what's hosted with regards to more social science data. So maybe that's something that we could expand on, because I know photographs can be on MEDIN for like surveys on the sea floor and stuff like that. Yeah,
so you're absolutely right that at the moment MEDIN doesn't have a natural home for social science data. You will find some on there that have made their way on. In terms of how it copes with that sort of data, the maps, the photographs, etc., I think the closest data centre that we would have that regularly deals with that sort of information would be the historic environment one, the archaeology. They deal a lot more than some of the other data centres in terms of the qualitative information. However, having said that, so about 6 years ago, MEDIN explored the possibility of encompassing a social science data centre, and at that point we concluded it wasn't appropriate to do so. I think it's something that we can start exploring again if there's a driver for it.
Yeah, sounds good. The next question is kind of for, I guess, maybe for me, is it possible to get a copy of this presentation and recording of this webinar? Yes, we are recording it, and I probably expect that it will be uploaded somewhere that will be accessible, maybe on the SMMR website, or just keep a track on our Twitter feed, and then you'll be able to find that information. Our next question for you, Claire, is does MEDIN assist with contacting the data holders and getting permission to use data?
The MEDIN data centres, when they are archiving data for the people that have collected the data, they make sure that they have a clear understanding of what that data holder, what that data owner permits, and so that's described very clearly in MEDIN. In terms of data that's outside of the data centres, MEDIN assists in providing links to how to contact those people, as opposed to actually contacting them ourselves.
That's good to hear. That's a lot of support, even if you don't have the necessary links where you can be directed to if you're at all unsure. Don't have any other questions submitted. Oh wait, here we go. Yeah, for anyone else who still has questions that they want to ask, got plenty of time, so please type it in the Q&A box that's just below Claire's presentation. The next question is, will the Ministry of Defence be approached to be a part of MEDIN network?
So at the moment, the UK Hydrographic Office is our closest link to the Ministry of Defence, and they are one of our data centres. So they make available the data that they're allowed to from the Ministry of Defence. So I'd say they are involved in that regard.
And the next one asks, does MEDIN issue or help with issuing DOIs?
Yes, so the MEDIN data centres are all able to mint digital object identifiers. So if you archive your data at one of the data centres, then yes, they'll happily mint a DOI for you.
Claire, might I ask a question?
Of course.
We've talked a lot about getting data out, and that is the main topic today. But how much help do MEDIN give with people who are new to MEDIN, perhaps wanting to submit data as part of a programme, or because they feel it would be useful to other workers? Yeah,
so we run regular training opportunities for people wanting to use our tools or supply metadata to MEDIN for the first time. Normally we run those about 4 or 5 times a year around the country. We're moving to running them online in the coming months to cope with the current situation. But yes, yeah, we are keen to help, and we have a help desk available if there's not a workshop coming up. So I can circulate the link to the help desk as well, who are specifically there to help with the people completing metadata in order to be submitted to MEDIN.
Thank you.
Great. We had a question that did come in through the chat. So it says, is MEDIN only for environmental data, or does it contain biotic data as well?
It contains biological data as well. So one of our data centres is DASSH, which is based at the Marine Biological Association down in Plymouth, and that's specifically for species and habitats data. We also have a fisheries data centre. So yes, it's broad environmental data, not just the abiotic.
That's good to hear. Yeah, I can see a question that you've already answered. I come in. Would MEDIN accept publicly generated data such as that from citizen science, not necessarily submitted via a known institute? You know, is there any kind of quality check, or is this something that you could potentially host as well? So
the MEDIN portal, which includes the descriptions of all the data in the data centres and then data from other sources, that would be, it would be perfectly fine for someone to upload a description of the citizen science data availability. For data to go into a data centre, certainly DASSH, the Species and Habitats Data Centre, is regularly is used to working with citizen science data, so there's scope for archiving that sort of data as well.
We have a question from one of our panelists going, are you aware of any social or economic data hosted by MEDIN?
Not off the top of my head, I can't think of specific examples, but there are some there. Yeah, so there are, let me think, there are data sets that are hosted at the Crown Estate, which I think would fall under that remit associated with marine renewables. There are data sets produced as part of the Productive Seas Evidence Group, one of the Marine Science Coordination Committee's evidence groups that are included. Yes, so there are some there, but I just can't think of the specific examples at the moment.
Don't worry, there was a lot of pressure just then. Just scanning through our Q&As, we've gone through everything that has already been submitted, I believe. So we still have a little bit of time if anyone has anything else that they wish to ask Claire. I don't see anything else coming in at the moment. Guess I've got to ask any final comments, Claire, that you would like to say, or whilst we wait for any other final questions if they're submitted.
Well, no, thank you for the opportunity, and the questions that have come in have been brilliant. So yeah, it's a great.
Oh, yep. See, some people have already jumped right in. Very specific question has come in, as they say. But do you have any spatial data relating to sea haul out sites?
I'm afraid I'd have to check. I don't know that off the top of my head.
That's okay. I guess we would say check out MEDIN, the actual website itself, and see what's there. It sounds like there's a lot of information to support people in finding specific information anyway. And someone also asks, is there the opportunity to include estuarine and river tidal limit data, for instance?
So yes, I always say that if you consider something marine, then it can be marine from MEDIN's point of view. We don't try to impose an edge to marine. So it can go as deep as you like and it can go as shallow as you like. So yes, we completely acknowledge that when we're working interdisciplinary, we need to have those sources, the geographical sources of information.
Yeah. With the interface itself, someone's asked, Andy has asked, is there always a map interface to start the search?
Yes, the map is always there. You don't have to use it though. You can you can either leave it and search for everything, or you could type in limits if you wanted to, or you can just ignore it.
That's great. See if I've got anything else. With the fisheries data that you've mentioned that can be hosted, would that contain information on wild capture, or could this include information on aquaculture? So I guess if you've already just said, if you're considering it to be marine, there's the potential for aquaculture data too? Yes,
so the data centres for fisheries data are Marine Scotland and CEFAS, so the Centre for the Environment, Fisheries and Aquaculture site. So yes, aquaculture is included as well.
That's good to know. Sounds like, yeah, as you said, anything that's you could put a marine badge on, it can be there at least. I don't see any other questions coming in.
I could, there are a couple of areas that we know within the environmental data side, so excluding the fact of socioeconomic data not being well represented in MEDIN, there are other data types that we don't have a data centre for at the moment. Doesn't mean there's not data there, but they're not being managed in a data centre. So that's underwater noise data, seabed data, and socioeconomic, we've talked about that one.
Yeah, I'm sure that there is plenty of data out there that can now be integrated. Thank you so much, Claire, for your talk. I'm going to pass back to David Patterson.
Great presentation. Thank you very much, Claire. And if there are any questions on the MEDIN side, then I'm sure Claire would be happy to answer them. If people have questions on the SMMR programme side, then please contact myself, David Patterson, or Mark James, or Emma DeFew, or through the SMMR website. But thank you very much for that, Claire, and Thanks for taking the effort, and it's hard work doing these things, especially when we get piles of questions like that. So thank you very much, and over and out.